Movies, games, now let's talk about something with meaning and purpose, right? Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here on behalf of McKinsey to present the 2016 Global Benefactor Award. The Global Benefactor Award is about stepping up with energy and conviction, and contributing to the betterment of society and world around us. This, of course, can be done in many ways. Philanthropy, dedicating one's life to particular causes, an individual's philosophy, whether they do it personally or professionally. This is a theme that particularly resonates with us in McKinsey. We firmly believe that we should play an important role in addressing the most important issues of industry and communities. We are committed in focusing our efforts, particularly through Churchill in this way. So when the announcement came that the Churchill Academy had selected Reid Hoffman to receive this award, we could not have been more excited. Reid, we are honored to present to you the 2016 Global Benefactor Churchill Award. Thanks for thinking big. Julie will draw this out a bit more in terms of how Reid does this today. Reid will be joining us from Colorado, and he will be participating remotely in a discussion with Julie, and she's here with us today. Please join me in welcoming Reid Hoffman and Julie.
Hi.
How are you?
See you.
Okay, here we go.
One of us.
One of us is very exciting. All right, please come over here. There we go. Yeah.
3, 2.
Thank you. Okay. So how are you going to do this?
I was hoping you'd tell me.
Okay. There he is. There he is.
This is a particularly small hat anyway, but given the size you're appearing in, it's sort of it's kind of a comical, fun thing. But good to see you. So I have a bit of a dilemma because the things I want to say about Reid, I think might make him uncomfortable. Reid's all about the work, and he has a stealthiness to him that he's not about attention on himself. So I'm going to ask you to just plug your ears, Reid, while I do this first part, and then there we go. Thanks. Reid and I have known each other almost a decade and a half. We have worked on the board of Kiva for almost a decade, and we have been having an interesting kind of long-running conversation, or a series of conversations over that time. Each one, for me, is a master class. There's something about the way that Reid thinks, sort of there's a surgical precision that makes you just want to be better. And so I just feel an incredible sense of gratitude, and I'm just humbled and honored to be able to do this with you tonight. I feel just incredibly fortunate to call you a friend. So if there's one word that describes Reid, it's scale. And he thinks about scale in everything that he does. So what I wanted to try and do tonight, my goal is to actually hack the Reid Hoffman operating system. And I'm hoping you'll help me and figure out kind of how to identify the master algorithm and convince him that the ultimate act of scale would be to actually open source the Reid Hoffman operating system. You guys with me on this? All right, great. He doesn't really, you don't need an introduction. I think people know sort of the long-running list of companies that you have been involved with. I think what's striking about it is, in terms of just the high line, is that they're all companies that are purpose-driven. They are at the forefront of their field. They've been pioneers, and you could put world's largest in the front of all of them. And so maybe what I'll do is I'll just talk a little bit about what you've done that's not in your bio. You've been advising the Obama White House around technology policy. You've gathered small groups of us around what, as a private citizen, what Obama might do in the future. And when you're not advising or investing in or serving on the boards of the 100 companies that you're involved with or doing the work with the White House, you find time to mentor and advise friends and colleagues. And when you're not doing that, you are designing games. And the most recent game being trumped up cards. Does anybody know this one? For those of you who don't know about trump cards, just Google it, buy one. It'll be the most fun you've had since the election started. So, okay. So with that, I'm going to ask you actually a question. So, why scale? How long have you been thinking about this, and what's your mindset?
So part of, I think, what's key to think about this is, and I think, by the way, not everyone needs to scale, but for me, I tend to think about how does humanity evolve? So what is the way that we kind of go into the future together, both as individuals and as a group? And, sometimes you can do that by contributing an idea. That was my original plan. I thought I might become a philosopher, an academic, a public intellectual. And then what I realized was actually, in fact, by participating in the kind of software revolution, the online revolution, the internet revolution, the mobile revolution, now the social and professional network revolution, that I could actually help how people charted their own path, and also how collectively in the millions and the hundreds of millions and the billions, we can be better as both as individuals and together. And the reason why to think about scale is because those are the things that, like if you take a simple kind of utilitarian meaning of life, which is how do you create the most impact, I think it comes down to almost a super simple variable, which is a number of people, depth of impact, and time. And if you multiply those three things together, you end up with kind of how much you have helped improve or shape or enable people's lives and society. And so for me, that's almost always how I think about this. There's sometimes a difference when you're sitting down with a coffee with a friend and your scale is the depth at which you're talking to them. But broadly, I think that the way to look to think about this is the meaning that we create by how we influence millions of people's lives.
So it seems that maybe your first scale endeavor was actually thinking about how to scale yourself, because you were going to go into academia and be a public intellectual, and instead you decided to go into business and become an entrepreneur. What was the logic there?
Well, the logic was I started thinking about what it would take to write a PhD. And part of the kind of the degree of precision and what counted as professionalism would be that maybe you'd be lucky if 50 people would read it, and even a relatively small number of people would be capable of understanding it. And while I think there is good work there, you can contribute to concepts that shape how people think about these things. I realized what I was much more interested in was kind of how we express human nature. What is current human nature? How does it shaped? How does it evolve? And that I wanted to be on a much broader scale, and that simply writing a PhD or academic book was unlikely to kind of play at the in the way of helping shape people's lives that I'd wanted. And then I'd had the good fortune and pure luck of going to Stanford as an undergraduate. And so I thought about software a lot. I thought about entrepreneurship. I'd never participated in it. And I said, well, actually, maybe I should go back and do that. And that would be a way to actually, in fact, help us collectively evolve to compassion, to wisdom, to knowledge, to economic capability, all of these kind of vectors that lead to improved human lives.
And why why do you care about impact? And, how did you think about it? So, I think some people might look at you and say, gee, well, he's wealthy, he's got a lot of resources to put towards things that he cares about, but you've been thinking about impact long before you're wealthy. How did you think about it, and why did you care about it?
Well, part of it is that when you think about, if you think about, okay, how is the world a better place for my having been here? It's you'd like to be very strongly accretive. You'd say, well, I'm one person. I kind of consume this much calories and food and oxygen, and occupy this place in society. I've been fortunate with the kind of location of birth lottery in terms of I was born in the Stanford Hospital in Silicon Valley. How do I essentially make that worthwhile, worthy, meaningful? And, if you can, you play at the scale of millions, or if you want to and you can. But, part of what I realized in the very early days is that sometimes just contributing an idea, that was part of the reason of thinking about, writing books or essays. That can be meaningful and can scale. One of the things I realized when I was thinking about how do you contribute as a life, once I started down the path in Silicon Valley with a job at Apple and then a job at Fujitsu Software, it was actually, in fact, you should always be doing something to contribute every year, and you should be thinking about how do you do that. And so I started joining nonprofit boards, and in particular nonprofit boards where I felt that I could kind of make a significant significant difference. So, the very first one I did was this East Palo Alto nonprofit called Open Voice, which was working to get essentially teens from low-income families to participate in crossing the digital divide, to learn how to be on the internet, to express themselves, to contribute to the dialogue, and these sorts of things as a way of making that happen. And what you could realize is if even just a little bit of your time with your particular expertise, in my case that was online products and online networks and communities, that you can make a difference. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be large checks. It can be just something where you are the Archimedean lever. You can make something really work. And you just build that and scale yourself as you go. And so, that's how I started. And, each year I think, okay, now that I have these resources, this knowledge, these assets, what are the things that I can do now?
So kind of segue to that, because I think one of the things that we really have aligned around is global entrepreneurship. We've done a lot of things around that, and you've helped me sort of create a larger platform around that with Kiva. We both served as presidential ambassadors for global entrepreneurship. We've done some writing around this. And so, why, from your perspective, why is entrepreneurship as much of a kind of a social impact endeavor as it is a business?
Well, one of the things, obviously, people tend to think entrepreneurship is just the functioning of the capitalist-free economy. It's true, it's important. But when you look at it, the creation of jobs, the creation of products and services, these things are the things that allow people to pay for education for their children, medical care, contribute to their society. And so part of what's actually really essential is as we enter into this faster kind of technological disruption and creation, kind of creative destruction, as we worry about, can we create the right kinds of middle-class jobs in our country and in the world for the future? Actually, in fact, entrepreneurship is critically important. And what most people don't realize is that most systems tend to harden against entrepreneurship. Once you get all the haves, whether they're businesses or wealthy people or whatever, they tend to say, oh, no, let's lock this system in and make it just work for us. Whereas you have to leave room for the new challenges. You have to leave room for the new creators. And we do this really well in Silicon Valley. You kind of think, we created these big companies, but then we go and create the new companies after them. We don't just say, okay, those are the companies and we're done. And that kind of always the kind of creation of new is part of what allows us to create and invent the future. And so doing entrepreneurship as philanthropy, whether it's in Silicon Valley, in East Palo Alto, in Detroit, in the US, and in the world, then actually, in fact, helps us collectively create those jobs, those products, those services. And one of the things that people frequently forget about Adam Smith is that part of his kind of invention of the invisible hand, kind of free markets, was actually, in fact, a way of being of service to each other. And this is actually, in fact, one of the reasons why it's important to do, and one of the reasons why it's important to do philanthropically is because the natural tendency of human political systems and human social systems is to kind of harden against challengers. And actually, in fact, we need those in order to create the jobs of the future and therefore pay for education, pay for medical care, et cetera. And so that's part of the reason why it's been such a central part of, my philanthropic efforts, also yours, Julie, and a number of great people within Silicon Valley. And, Kiva and Endeavor, and Endeavor is, based out of New York, but global. I mean, all of these folks contribute mightily to this.
So should we be blurring the lines between business and philanthropy and really focusing and encouraging more purpose-driven business?
The answer to that question. The answer is obviously yes. I mean, one part of it is just creating good businesses. Those create jobs, products, services. Another part is to create businesses that actually, in fact, have a real mission to them, that have kind of a how do we not only create a good business, but have a really good social impact. Obviously in the kind of LinkedIn case, this is enabling economic opportunity for every individual, connecting talent opportunity. And then part of it is I actually think every business should look at its mission and say, how do I invest in my mission? My business creates a platform. How do I invest in it in order to create a disproportionate positive social impact? So, for example, at LinkedIn, we invest in veterans, being able to find jobs and reintegrate in the workforce. We've invested heavily in refugees, being able to find work, those kind of things, which, obviously play to our business, but we invest disproportionately in them because we're the right players to contribute there to society. And I think that does blur the line in very good ways, but it also, of course, has super positive impact with, motivated employees, with, customers who are very happy, with shareholders who believe in this. And that's part of where, business can be a great force for social good. And entrepreneurship can be, the creation of those new businesses, which are really key.
So are you willing to let us in on what your master algorithm might be?
Well, it kind of starts with you look at the outcomes and you think how many people, what kind of depth of impact with them, and then over time. And part of the reason why business models are really useful, one of the things that we do very well in Silicon Valley, and part of what I try to apply to all aspects of my philanthropy, or the vast majority of them, is because if you can actually make the business model work, then you can potentially create infinite organizations that are creating good social impact, good social change for individuals year after year, and that creates a large integration under the curve. And so you then say, okay, well, what's the way that I can get this thing to scale? How do I build it to scale from the beginning? How do I get customers? How do I have the organization do that? And how do I go through the phases? And that's part of one of the reasons why one of the books I'm working on now is blitzscaling. It's one of the things that we do very well in the Valley. And then how do we think about those variables from the very beginning, where you get one or more what I call Archimedean levers, which when you pull on them, you get to this scale impact of number of people, depth of impact, and time. And time is in part business models and an ability to continually fund it.
So if there's one thing that you would like people to remember or take away from tonight, what would that be?
What I would say is that your own ability to contribute at scale, you always have it. You don't need to have a large bank account. You don't need to have a, a completely unique position, like a big social media position or something like that. I think that actually, in fact, you can do this by where do you have expertise, and where is there some scale organization that's already creating a platform that you can contribute to and help amplify. Whether that's, for example, what Julie and I are doing with Kiva, trying to make like micro entrepreneurs all over the world enabled through the capital, through an online marketplace, whether or not that's, helping new entrepreneurs, whether or not that's working in a particular company that has kind of a scale impact and helping it with its mission and having a broader social impact. All of us can do this. And so you just think about, okay, where do I have a unique set of assets, a unique knowledge, a unique position, and where can I contribute? And then do so. And I think it's doable for everybody. So that's what I would hope that everyone would take away.
Okay, so well, if you'll indulge me, I just want to close by a passage from a Khalil Gibran quote, which I think sort of gets at your operating system. It touches on the impact you've had in the world and in a way that's touched me. You work that you may keep pace with the soul of the earth. When you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. When you work, you fulfill a part of Earth's furthest dream, assigned to you when that dream was born. And in keeping with yourself, with labor, you are in truth loving life. And to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's innermost secret. For work is love made visible. Thank you, Reid. I'm grateful that you're in the world, and I'm grateful that you're in my world.
Thank you.